Sir, can I have your attention, please? Very warm welcome for today's session, and such a beautiful summit was going on for the last 2 days, and we are concluding today. And we have a very good session, important session for our society, which is we are looking for now, is role of S&T policy for disaster ready society and enhancement of livelihood. And in this regard, I would say the eminent guest and panelist, so-called panelist we have today, and I think we will be very enlightened to listen them and take away from their speech, their valuable thoughts and their experiences, and I look forward for your participations and patience for the session. And in this regard, I will just introduce and short introduce to invite them on the dais to take their seat. First, shall I call Professor T.V. Bharat, IIT Guwahati, Civil Department. Can I have a round of applause, please? And morning we should have a, come on, Josh, for this. Sir, please take your seat. Then I invite Dr. Abhinandan Saikia, Assistant Professor, Center for Ecology, Environment and Sustainable Development, Tata Institute of Social Science. Sir, please come guys and take your seat. Then we have eminent guest, Professor B.K. Tewari, former HOD Department, Environment Studies, Northeastern University. Sir, I request to take your seat. And we have another very important guest, but he will be joining another 10 to 15 minutes time. He is our Colonel Amit Pandey, and commanding 134 Battalion Eco Assam. I think that's it. And he asked us to start because he will be joining in the 10 to 15 minutes. So with his permission and with our distinguished guest, I request T.V. Bharat sir, please start moderating the session today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Arvind. We will start our session now. We will start a talk on this particular topic, disaster management. And each person I request to confine it to 15 minutes. And there will be a discussion at the end of all the 4 presentations. So with that, probably we will be able to all of us to attend, the library session that is scheduled at 12 o'clock. So with that brief information, I will start the first presentation as it is scheduled. So I will start with this. I have a brief presentation to make. Of the and all others, very good morning to all of you. Professor Bharat from the Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Guwahati, and also Associate Faculty and Center for Disaster Management Research at the same institute. So today I will talk about a very important disaster, that is landslides. Rather than speaking on the post-disaster management, I will speak about some engineering aspects of these landslides and how we can prevent to happen so that we can save our so many lives. And so my talk is titled as landslides, mechanism, measures and mitigation. We don't require any introduction for landslides because landslides it's like part of our day-to-day activity, especially in northeast region. So that is the movement of mass rock, earth, or debris down the slope. So maybe you can put off the lights here as well. So it's a movement of mass of rock or soils or debris down the slope. These termed as landslide. And the landscapes could be of different nature or could be possibly because of different factors. So anthropogenic activities are attributed in general because a lot of infrastructure development is taking place currently in Northeast India. And 2 lanes are becoming 4 lanes. And this is very important, in fact, for connecting people. So that the economy improves and everything improves, tourism improves, everything improves. And but then without much engineering intervention, if such things are taking place, without understanding the nature of the ground, then the landscapes matter. And similarly the earthquake induced landslide we generally don't see, but earthquakes can really contribute to the landslides because of the developments of fault zones or any other thing during the earthquake. Later on it can trigger to landslide because of other factors. Rainfall is one of the foremost important factors that causes the landslides, and because of the rainfall is so high in this region, northeast region, and also geology is very weak, and all are weathered rocks, so it triggers landslide very often. And volcanoes, and most of these 3 factors, sometimes together they contribute to the landslides. These are some of the recent landslides in Northeast India. The first one is Google landslide in Manipur, where there was a railway yard was made, and so during one of the benching process, cutting of the stone, that time the landslide occurred in the month of June 30th, and several officers have died during the event, and they got buried, and this was a very unfortunate event. And exact reasons is very difficult to understand also. Again, I am not interested in talking about exact reason why this has occurred, but some of the factors that would influence landslides I will discuss about. And especially, although I have been working on rainfall against landslides, this is my major research area, and then many students are working in this particular area. This was a shock for me when I heard that the 60-meter deep cut was taking place and the slip surface is 60-meter deep. Generally, rainfall-induced landslides are 2 meters shallow, but this was very deep. That was the first observation I had when I visited in August. And in fact, I could have went up to ridge and I could see what exactly was there, because there were a lot of factors people were speculating. And Northeast especially having a very complex terrain and poor geology. So it contains of highly weathered rocks and weathered soils, like shales, and they weathered, and sometimes they look like black in color and sometimes they are red in color. So when you have iron oxides, they look in red in color. They also become like laterites, and they actually, when the rainfall occurs, the shear strength or the strength of the particular soil actually comes down and then it comes down. So the rainfall conditions and the seismic activity, anthropogenic activities which I was just mentioning, toe cutting is one of the major reasons why the slope can fail. So engineering, first thing, that is what is taught. Toe should not be cut. Toe generally is protected, or it is loaded more so that the slope can be protected. But when we are making any road construction, first thing is we disturb the road. Or we cut the bench, we cut the slope of the slope directly at the negative bench without supporting it. And changing the slope, that is also required sometimes when we are making a bay, and also deforestation, we have to cut trees and poor drainage. Natural drainage we try to destroy. That is what the major factor is. And by constructing the retaining walls, breast walls, and the other thing, if proper vacuuming is not maintained, which actually builds up pore pressures behind the retaining walls, and which can cause trigger of failures. So mining activities, because we all know a lot of mineral resources are available in Northeast India, especially in Meghalaya, we have limestones. So mining activity takes place. So because of these reasons, sometimes what can happen is that the drainage completely changes, and then it is you might have created a cache line somewhere, but then water will not flow through that, but water flows through the slope. So which can also prepare the landscape. As I mentioned, this is one of the factors that poor geology, because it contains of shales and weathered shales, etc., and then high rainfall infiltration. And seismic activity is another one. Although it doesn't enter the landscape directly, because we haven't heard, at least I didn't hear, any earthquake-induced landscape directly. But then it can cause a lot of, development of fissures and faults, which can act as, water ponds into that, and then later on it can trigger the landscape. So these are some of the anthropogenic activities I was mentioning about the toe getting etc. And shifting cultivations we'll talk about very often. So from engineering perspective, what I can understand is that the drainage aspects can change, and there are other panelists who can speak on cultivation etc. During their speech. So this changing the hydraulic characteristics of the slope can really is really important, because the amount of water that percolates into the ground or surface runoff will definitely change. So if you talk about the mechanism of the landscape, if you dump soil from a truck, unload a soil from a truck, it occupies a slope. So if you take a dry sand, which takes about 30 degrees or 28 degrees, not more than that. Because the angle of repose of the particular slope is same as your angle of internal friction of the particular soil. So this is a middle product, angle of internal frictional resistance. So these values generally vary between 25 to 38 maximum. Beyond that, soils do not have angle of internal friction. So the maximum slope you can achieve is 38 degrees, not more than that. But more than that slope you can achieve if the soil has other properties like cohesion. That means there is a bondage between individual particles. That happens in fine-grained soils, like clays or something. Or you should have some water, partly saturated conditions. So even with sand, we make castles on beach sand. Right? That is possible because it is partly saturated. If it is fully saturated or fully dry, we cannot make that. If it is completely dry, it will collapse. It will come down to again 28 or 30 degrees. So generally what happens is the slopes are stable in dry season with vegetation etc. When partly saturated conditions, they are glued together due to surface tension forces. But when rainfall occurs, with infiltration, the shear strength comes down. Because of the shear strength is coming down, it has to slope. Unless until there are strength measures that are taken. Natural slopes, when we disturb, we have to keep in mind that we have to protect them. And we should not disturb the flow patterns. That is a major thing that we should consider. So this is the left hand side. What you see is before the landscape, before any cutting process has taken place. And on the right hand side, you see that there is a roadway that has been made. Now, on the hillside and on the valley side, you have to protect the soil. Generally, retaining walls are placed using gabions and flexible retaining walls. Something is placed generally on the left hand side. Generally, what I observed is that behind that there should be a filter. Without filter material, the soil seeps in and then it chokes all the inflows. So poor pressure builds its water material. But there should be a filter material or some geotextiles etc. have to be maintained. And otherwise, the water has to percolate underneath the road and it has to come from the valley side. So where you generally have a press wall or something is built to protect the slope. So either the buildup of poor pressure takes place there and then failure takes place. And sometimes if you have certain particular soil called cryolite, which is called chenalite, which is available in most of the places, especially here in yesterday I have seen in Nepal. White colored soil, somewhere it was actually coming down from the hill slope. And I have compared the sample also. Sometimes even sandstone also appears little white in color, but in texture you can make out that this is very soft. Clay, this is a clay. So which collapses when it wets. Because of that the road gets damaged. Earlier it would not have got wet when the surface runoff takes place, but because of the construction of this pool or something, and the pore pressures are choked down, or the flow channels are choked on the valley side or on the hillside, then the water flow takes place underneath the road, the tank can collapse and then can damage the infrastructure. So, to protect any slope or to prevent any disaster from the landslide disaster from that, there are some checks that can be made beforehand, so that we don't need to spend a lot of money or we don't need to lose lives due to the disaster. Few things are like satellite investigation, satellite images, those are available. Some of them are free of cost, these are open source. And like Sentinel, etc., European satellite, and some of our satellite data we have, and fewer optical, fewer microwave, and lot of data we have for last 20-30 years. So using these data, we can understand the movement that is taking place at any given region. So deformation maps can develop, and also we can see, how the land use, land cover characteristics are changing at any given region. So those are possible with satellite data. So the previous figure was from Shillong bypass, that particular road. So we have several remote sensing based. In fact, in Facebook also we have army, organization where it works on satellite, especially disaster management or landslides, using satellite in Kenya. So I'm not getting into more details about it because time is 15 minutes and what is being given to everybody. And these are some of the satellites that are available, and then time lag between each image is about 6 days or something. So depending on how the rotation is taking place across around the Earth. So these are some of the satellite images. This is from the ESAC that have been developed using Cartosat. That is optical data, and this is using the microwave data for off-long region. So this is what I was mentioning, Jatinga section, where presence of tiling actually can cause huge disturbance as subsequence to the infrastructure or the roads. So on the right hand side you see that there is a heaping up of ABL walls, and on the left hand side you see that there is a subsidence. Both are in the same section. So this is because of presence of different clay windows. One is expansive clay, when it wets it expands. Another one is collapsible soil. When it wets it collapses. So it can cause different settlements. And then the 4-layer road is mentioned here, the NH54. So I was talking about the breast wall and the retaining walls. So the condition of the breast walls and the retaining walls is when backfills are not properly considered, or backfill soils are not given or only. And we can model, in fact, if all the soil characteristics or rock characteristics are known at a given site, it is possible to understand what would be the triggering mechanism or what can prevent it. Whether it is stable or not. First of all, that can be seen using physics-based modeling. So physics-based modeling requires all the physical characteristics of the vehicles. Sometimes we have to test the algorithm. So sometimes when you make a cut, and then there are some mitigation measures that can be adopted, such as some of them are eco-friendly mitigation measures that can be adopted. So some of them are recently they got bioengineered materials to reinforce the slopes. So we know that the trees, the root system can actually protect the soils. Generally, that is what our understanding is. But if you see some other trees, what I heard is pine trees have the root depth is hardly 1 meter. But then the trunk is huge. The weight is so high, but the root depth is very shallow. But if you take some grass like vetiver depth, and then you can get reinforced. But hydraulic characteristics are slightly different because deep penetration of water place, and adopting natural grass varieties can change the hydraulic characteristics. That's why it can be designed so that naturally to protect the slopes. Similarly, you may have to adopt some catch drains, tube drains on the hill slopes to drain the water, or naturally you should allow the water to percolate to the down, to the valley side. So for that you can adopt this kind of coil mats system, etc., so that it can protect the soils, it will not allow it to allow the soils to erode, and it can naturally allow the water to pass. So we have huge data sets also in different agencies. So I think one of the policies should be that any large infrastructure project is taken up, all the organizations should come together, share information, and then understand whether this is a earthquake prone area or landslide prone area. That can be understood because we have the data for the last 30 years using the satellites. So we can analyze it and see whether movement has taken place earlier or not. So that planning has to take place beforehand. That's what I understand. I believe. And with that, I will close my session. Thank you so much. The questions will be taken up towards the end, as I mentioned sometimes.
Insight given to us, and we'll be taking care of all the future our prospects. And sir, to all of you, I would like to introduce our most valuable guest also has come. Sri C.P. Mara, sir, IFS retired member of Meghalaya, State Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, advisory board member of this summit. And also, I like to introduce with honor Dr. Rajdeep Roy, Honorable MP. Sir, you are here, and board member of Green Summit. And we have another, Sri Nilanjan Roy, former CEO, Times of India board member, President and advisory board member of Green Summit. And we have also our Colonel Sir, Hamid Pandey sir, also here today in our as a guest. Thank you sir, and let us give him a round of applause for all of them. Thank you sir. Bharat sir, I request you take the session further. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the introduction. From Tata Institute of Social Science. Thank you so much.
Very good morning to all of you. And as I come from a social science institute, so there's a bad habit of social scientists that we always follow the analytical modern decision work. So I have to be staying on time because we have the habit of going by minutes. First of all, thank you the organizers of this Green Summit, and it's good to be here once again in Meghalaya among the misty hills, and also cleaning my lungs because I come from Guwahati. Of course, it's quite a small distance, but the moment we climb the hills, you can also start your oxygen getting better. And I start with your permission with the episodes which I have witnessed when I at some point was a part of World Wildlife Fund for Nature, WWF at some point in time in the past. And that time I was in Delhi, and one of our team went to Ladakh. And that time Ladakh was an union territory. It was a part of not the union territory, part of Jammu and Kashmir. Then what has happened is that there were some festivals going on. And at some point, we invited the Bhangra team from Punjab to come here and give their performance. So everything was going on in order, and the dance and performances were going really nice. And at some point, what has happened that one by one, the dancers on the stage started falling down. They started fainting. Okay? And we thought maybe it's because of some food poisoning or something else. But then that particular whole episode opened up something that we as Indians have to realize that we live in different biographies. In fact, it was an eye-opener. Saying that Bhangra cannot be danced in Ladakh, Bhangra can dance with only in valleys. Bihu cannot be danced in hills, Bihu can be danced only in valleys. Because the way how you dance Bihu and how you dance Bhangra, the beat is totally different, it's very fast. But if you look into the comparison of the hill dances, they dance in rounds. They go slowly, tap by tap, and that goes with the oxygen, that goes with the way how they capture. So it's basically it's something to say that it's a part of the cultural capital, it's part of the indigenous knowledge systems. It's also about something about traditional ecological knowledge that of course we are able to look when we look into narratives of history, how we have come to this stage today. My friend, of course, we had a few chit-chat, and I think in the beginning, as the first speaker, he talked about Haflong, and I was watching him because recently I went to Haflong, and quite surprisingly, I could see also those post-disaster effect on the highways, because I went as a person, as a resource person for Assam Climate Change Society, a special vehicle environmental Assam, in order to understand the climate change scenarios and what is happening in the case of Dima South District. Interestingly, we know that the Haflong has faced landslides, and of course there are also technological intervention in the name of different scientific breakthrough. But you know, I should be thankful to my daughter who is in class 4, and when I was there in Haflong in the circuit house, she telephoned me and she found out, she asked me a question that where you are right now, because sometimes she has curiosity. And I said, I'm in Haflong. So out of jokes, she said, is it something along which has been carved? And I said, no, obviously no. So then why is named Haflong? And that actually opened my curiosity to know what is Haflong. Because I thought sometimes that maybe Haflong is a name given by so-called British, because they have the habit of giving names wherever they go as it colonizes, and also change the names. So maybe that name sounds trendy, so they went with that here. But interestingly, the word Haflong comes from Dimasa word, meaning ant hill. Ant hill. And that itself is an indicator that when you have to do some sort of intervention, bringing scientific breakthrough in the way of controlling nature, you need to really appreciate first of all the geography, the biogeography, people's knowledge, communities' innovation, how they actually perceive the land. And I think at some point of time, Britishers know that whatever we would say so. If you look in the cartography style of British India, the way the calculation they have gone through, in Haflong, they have made, of course, a railway, which still they has not faced any sort of massive landslide. Because they were calculating and they have not disturbed the whole, distribution of the hill. They were very much actually cautious. But we here talk about the inauguration of a train like, I think, what is the train name that goes for? We are having it in Haflong, we go for tourist purpose. Vista, yeah. So we have opened the Vista, the Vista has widened, but at the same time, we have actually not celebrated the clock of nature. So there was actually a sort of a tussle that is going on between the natural clock and the mechanical clock. And somewhere down the line, the calculations were not fitting on place. Now, I was reading the title, it says about S&P indicators for disaster, pro-disaster friendly action, and also about livelihood. Interesting subject. In fact, coming from Northeast, I would say this is really needed, and this function is very much required. And we have to really look, first of all, because when you talk about S&P indicators, maybe at some point of time we also need to know that why in 21st century, we have to talk and celebrate a word called SMT together. Because till the middle of 20th century, science was spoken differently and technology was spoken differently. And at some point, there was a big gap between technology and science. In fact, science became more open and more, discussed in public domain after the Industrial Revolution. But no doubt, technology has a longer history. We started with human civilization. But it gained currency only in the later part of 1970s. So there was a big distortion between when you try to perceive what is science and what is technology. In fact, if you have to talk about technology, we cannot also miss out the indigenous communities. Because there where the whole root of knowledge system lies across. According to Ogawa, who is a Japanese expert on science technology studies, he said it is not basically an indigenous knowledge, it is basically called as indigenous science. And that has also parallels with modern science. In fact, at some point, when you look into also the concept of modern science, it talks more about universalization. More about universalization, which might have a tendency to look the world from a one-size-fits-all policy, which actually do not work. And let me tell you friends, India is a land of 10 biogeographies. 10 biogeographies, and it is not something of mazak. When I say use the word mazak, that means it has some sort of a signal. That means whatever you think as appropriate in Andaman and Nicobar, suppose there is a particular grass that is grown in Andaman and Nicobar, which you think is a part of coastal ecosystem, and if you try to introduce a similar grass in the coastal side of Tamil Nadu, it might have some different implications. It is not that it's a part of India, you have to also look into the biosographical aspect. And keeping that in mind, we have to also design the SND policies accordingly. Interestingly, when I talked about the modern science context, I talked about the universalization of the ideas, I talked about the so-called one size fits all concept. But if you look into the other side of in technology, when I talked about indigenous community, let us go back to 1980s, when at some point we as Indians, first of all, of course, we had the history of talking about forest issues and also about the community rights since the age of Arthashastra. Okay, we cannot discard the very knowledge systems what at some point of time Chanakya, gave his wisdom in his book called Arthashastra. Okay. In fact, we know the chapters, what was also for the king, what was for the forest rights, what was for the forest communities, and there are a lot of issues related to environment, development, and industries. Okay? But at the same time, if you look into the world of sustainable development, many a times, because I come from a Center for Ecology, Environment, and Sustainable Development, one of my students once asked me, so why do you think this is the way how you have named the center? Then obviously I could defend. So I said, what is the wrong in it? Okay, what of the way why you have named it ecology, environment, and sustainable development? Of course, it made me think so. But then I showed him some colors. I said, if I put green color in ecology, if I put the red color in environment, what do I supposed to put in sustainable development? Maybe a pale yellow or maybe an orange. So one way down the line, it is a discourse of human civilizations ever since they started it and what it is now. Because over the time when we talk about the ecology and environment connection, ecology is a process and environment is a product of that process. So whatever we are living in today, talking about it, is the environment. But at the same time, there are also processes going dynamically at the same time. Okay? And it's not a static entity. We call it ecology. Now, in sustainable development, when you look into it, there is also something called Our Common Future. There's a book on this, and there's also another document which is linked with this. We call it Agenda 21. And this Agenda 21 was actually some of the policies, some of the design for 21st century, which also has a subsector called Local Agenda 21. And this Local Agenda 21 is prioritized on keeping in mind the local geographies, how we have to design whenever we move from one place to another. And that is something, a priority that was being made for the 21st century. So, S&T, Science and Technology Indicators, if I go by my understanding, there's a manual called Frascati manual, which talked about S&T indicators in the world. Okay? But at the same time, how these S&T indicators can be brought into something called innovation, okay, which is very much important, because nowadays we cannot think anything without the use of word called innovation. Of course, I have some reservation when I say innovation, because I need to know what we mean by innovation. But nowadays you can see it has become one way a common word. Wherever we use policies, we talk about innovations. And of course, that is a material issue. But when you look into the innovation, similarly, like Frascati manual, there is something called Oslo manual, which talks about innovation. This is a manual for innovative indicators. This is linked with S&T, one element. But interestingly, this Oslo manual also has to undergo an amendment when it was placed in Bogota, in Latin America once. Why? Because this indicators, what was made for innovation, was not at all in tune with the local geography. So Bogota manual brought a sort of a socio-economic, socio-ecological factors in the idea of innovation when we have designed the something policy related with culture, geography, and also about the other entities. Okay? So, in 21st century today we are living in a rich society. We cannot ignore the contribution of Ulrich Beck. We talked about a rich society at some point of time. And every time we talk about new innovation, we have to keep in mind that every innovation adds with an uncertainty. And that uncertainty is actually the window or the Pandora's box for new scientific breakthrough. And that's where the whole journey goes on. In fact, when I was coming today towards this place, I could see some, some writings on the road, and it says that fear is reaction. Fear is reaction, and courage is action. So maybe, I think at some point, the hope and the courage will go together. Whatever we say about it, we are talking about the problems, but at the same time, we have to also think about certain solutions. So when you look into it, we all know that in 21st century, we have been facing something called a factor of climate change. This is not new. In fact, whenever I start a class in the university, I ask sometimes that what do you think about weather and climate? And how many climates you have seen in your lifetime? In fact, I'm 45 okay, now. And I say that in my lifetime, if I go by my schooling understandings, in the school I learned about geography, I was taught that a climate is actually a study of weather for around 30 to 35 years. So in my lifetime, maybe I have committed one climate change, okay, or I have studied one climate. But this whole discourse of climate change has brought a new sort of a new understanding to that whole epistemological understanding of climate. In fact, today, the change has become so much repetitive that every 5 years, just like a 5-year plan which we had earlier, it is coming up with new sort of dimensions. New ideas are coming. In fact, the variables that are using in statistics now are also being questioned. Today, in statistics, the dependent and independent variables are changing their roles. Earlier, agriculture was a dependent variable, rainfall was an independent variable. Rainfall will decide the fate of agriculture. But today, by the way how we do agriculture, you can decide the climate and weather of the place. So in a way, the variables are also changing. So when you look into policies, you cannot ignore even the micro issue, because that can also become a mega issue or a macro issue in the due course of time. So I think it's about networking, it's about giving priority, and also at the same time, it's not about fear. As I was telling you, climate change has become the denominator for every policy issue. It has become a transdisciplinary issue. You cannot ignore it. And every time there's climate change coming back, maybe this just now behind me. Okay? So if I have to come up finally to my conclusion, because I think, as I told you, I have a bad habit of going by analytic as a social scientist. I would say that whenever we design for S&T indicators for disaster-prone areas, because in Northeast, I would say that it's a beautiful place. In fact, if I die tomorrow, I would also wish that I would be born again in Northeast. Not in a place called America, not in a place called Europe, but in Northeast once and again. To get the beauty once and again, and to also write the incomplete chapters we could not do it in this lifetime. In Northeast, if you remember into it, long time back when Hook came up, Benjamin Hooker, there was another botanist called Hooker who visited, and I did, by the way, I'm graduating botany, though I am a social scientist now. So Hooker, when he traveled in Northeast at some point of time, he was very cautious. He said, while going back to England, he said, you know, in Northeast, at every step you need to be careful. Because at every step there is a medicinal plants. And every step there is a different way how you look the whole year. Because it's not only about the soil, but the very micro issue of the soil will determine the diversity. In fact, Vavilov, Russian scientist, who was later on jailed by Lysenko, a Russian administrator under the rule of Joseph Stalin, he told once that Northeast is actually the center of citrus tourism. आप लोग जो नींबू लेते हैं ना, नींबू, जो लेमन का जो मदरबोर्ड है वो नॉर्थ-ईस्ट में है, okay? In fact, M.S. Swaminathan, when he visited Northeast India in Arunachal Pradesh in a monastery, he took a picture which shows that there is an umbilical link also with the rice varieties that all the world now share. So Northeast, no doubt, might be smaller in its way of looking, but it is actually the opening towards the Big Bang. Okay? And in fact, let us also understand the fact, because I was just discussing with my friend before we had a kind of nice, we did talk about sifting cultivation. Of course, this has been my PhD topic, something close to my heart, and of course, Professor Day3 is also here. I referred it in my PhD, because Northeast chapter without doing sifting cultivation cannot be written without the reference of Professor Day3. And I think I am really today very happy, not that I am coming here, but also to share the same dice with him. And it's actually privileged for him. So, in a way, when I look into the sifting cultivation, many times we look at it as a political side of agriculture. Wherever we have landslides in Northeast, we try to openly relate with sifting cultivation. But let us not forget, the sifting cultivation is not only an agriculture, it is a socio-cultural economic package. It has a big, broader definition. It is linked with social capital, it is linked with national capital, it is linked with cultural capital, it is linked with human capital, and overall, it is actually the basis or philosophy of life. So if you are disturbing sifting cultivation, you are not disturbing only the agriculture, you are also disturbing the property relations. So one way down the line, you have to think in landscape mode, we have to think in a broader perspective when we are dealing with sifting cultivation. That's some of the submission that I have made. Secondly, I think Northeast also has to be very careful when you talk about development, because Northeast is a place of elephant corridors. Out of the 101 elephant corridors by International Foundation for Animal Welfare, along with WTI, Wildlife Trust of India, they came up with a book called Right to Passage, not for you, but for the elephants. And these elephants, in India we have around 101 elephant corridors, if I am not mistaken. Out of them, 22 elephant corridors are in Northeast India, out of which 80% are in Assam. So when we are designing also industrial corridor in the name of active policy, one has to be careful so that there is a speed breaker when you make an expressway. Otherwise, the biosensitivity of the place will be lost. Tomorrow, you will be only selling your ideas cosmetically in the name of ecotourism. Because ecotourism is not something a level. Ecotourism needs to be respected both epistemologically, both in spirit and practice. So I think there has to be a sort of a balance between the animal corridor and industrial corridor. Third, I would say that the scalability and sustainability. I have been struggling for last 12 years because I have been academics for last 12 years. Before that I was in research. But whatever I have been discussing, I always find that there is a problem with the concept of sustainable development. It's an oxymoron. Okay? But there is no difficulty in understanding the concept of sustainability. It's a beautiful concept. So that is why sometimes we talk about the market intervention, sometimes we talk about land use, land change, because now today we talk about oil palm cultivation. But I sometimes doubt that whether this oil palm cultivation will be able to address all the ecosystem services that is biodiversity in Northeast is still now addressing. Can my future generation can say that tomorrow whatever they have as a Northeast are the same and in better quality than what their past generation have seen? So this is a big question, because while coming from Indonesia and flying from Indonesia at some point of time from Bandung, okay, the island which I crossed was full of smoke. And it was not something because of something of bad weather, but it was smoke coming from oil palm cultivation. Interestingly, in Indonesia, when you look into it, there is a sea called Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. That is why sometimes even though smoke comes out, there is a way how the atmosphere can take care of the extra carbon dioxide. But in Northeast, it is landlocked. It is landlocked. And last but not the least, I would say that Northeast is also surrounded by international boundaries. So whatever decision we make in the name of S&T policies, in the name of disaster-friendly or livelihood generation, it has to go co-terminus. I really about co-terminus with the boundaries of the international boundary. Because otherwise, the smelter's code case will be repeated. International, the first smelter case which happened between Canada and USA, that will be repeated in Northeast. Okay? We are here as a reason, we are here to address an issue which is linked umbilically from micro to mega. And we need to respect at every contours the link is, the network. And with that, thank you once again for giving me your time and listening to the lastly, I will forget, this is a picture, they asked me whether I have a presentation. I said, I'm sorry I couldn't take a presentation this time. But I remember that I can show you this picture. This picture I always celebrate. I celebrate it more than the picture of Mona Lisa. And in fact, she is a beautiful lady. Okay. And this picture came in the later part of 19th century. It was being drawn by a painter called John Cast. Okay. And this picture was called American Progress. American Progress. Now if you look deeply into this picture, you can see a lady, you can say the fairy or angel, flying in the sky, and she's actually holding a book. Okay? And at the same time, she's also carrying something like a rope, okay? And a finger. And behind her, you can see there is navigation, there is locomotives, okay? And it's coming as a march of human civilization after the post-industrial revolution. Okay? And the book which she is taking on her hand is called Progress. Progress. Now, interestingly, there's a mismatch. Though she is beautiful, though she might be appealing in the sense of power or in sense of giving, more representation. But there is a problem with the communities like indigenous communities running away from her. There's a problem with the wildest near indigenous community running away from her. The nature, on the other hand, the hills and all also are shifted away from her. And there's also the farmers community on this side, which is also going not together with her but taking a different alternative route. So this picture was drawn in 19th century, but this picture is also repeated in the 21st century. Till date, we talk about the gaps in the society, haves and have-nots. In fact, I feel at some point in time, this is my last submission, that when you talk about the innovation, when you talk about the S&T policies, I think at some point we need to also explore that space of innovation between community space and also about a moral space. And otherwise, what will happen, this picture will be repeatable also for the future generation. Thank you.
That's an interesting talk by Dr. Arvind. So can you now call upon Professor Diversified
Formerly, I was professor in Northeastern University, Department of Environmental Studies. I think I don't have to introduce myself so much, but today I am going to talk about how the traditional society of Northeast have been always ready for disaster. So that means their ecological knowledge, their indigenous knowledge, what we call, or traditional knowledge, has always been taking care of the such issues emanating from the disaster or anything. Today I am going to talk about ensuring disaster resilience and enhancing livelihoods in Northeast India through traditional ecological knowledge. Since time is very short, I will skip many slides. How the traditional ecological knowledge, their role in enhancing resilience to climate change and climate change induced disaster is the topic of my discussion today. We all know, and it is a proven fact, that the climate change and disaster, they are linked. There is a linkage between these two. As the climate change is taking place, the incidences of disaster are also increasing. This may be through the extreme events like flood, drought, landslide, as just now explained. But what is more important is that who is most prone to the disasters. It is the biodiversity dependent livelihoods and the people who are poor, who are marginal, small farmers, sometimes tribal groups, etc. The people who are dependent on the forest, who are practicing biodiversity related livelihoods like fisheries, artisans, and in general, it is the rural poor who are most vulnerable to the disaster, climate change induced disasters. Now, how the traditional ecological knowledge have been used by the people here for the management of their natural resources, I am going to briefly discuss one by one. I will take up the forest, fisheries, agriculture, and some other issues. So firstly, if you see the forest, the people of this region, they have been managing the forest quite well, and they have been managing it by classifying the forest much better than what our policies they classify. In our policies, we classify village forest, we classify the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, reserve forests, etc. But here the many, I am talking about only Khasi society, but I have studied the many other societies of Northeast and found that they have classified the forest according to the needs and according to their requirement and on the basis of management. Just like here you see, in Khasi society, we have village forest, which is most of the time open for the use. Then we have pine forest, we have group of village forest, we have church forest, we have sacred forest, we have cemetery forest. There are many others, and each one are again further subdivided into the various classes. So this different typology of community forest, this shows that how intensely they have analyzed before classifying this. And the use and management for one forest is quite different from the other type of forest. And this is what makes it sustainable. Then their livelihood is based on the forest. They collect, produce, and also they cultivate certain forest products inside the forest, in the forest gardens, which I am not going to discuss. You see there are sacred groups and there are community forests. There are, within the sacred groups, there are places of worship, but I have left, just skip those. Here, this is important. This is a drawing made by me in southern slopes of Meghalaya. What you see that on the top there is a settlement, then there is a forest, Lausnam, then there are agricultural fields and grasslands, then downhill you will get the plantations, which can be agriculture, which can be many other, and then there are rivers. This is just one block, and the people are using in such a using scientific language, which is based on their traditional knowledge, and this is quite sustainable. Then you see the landscape level, you will find this is also a map drawn based on the, not on geographical, you can say, map, but there are in each, this is also in war area, that is southern Meghalaya, you will find that the peninsula town is there, then there are forests all around, and these forests, they help in prevention of landslide, as somebody said, and then also they prevent soil erosion, and they control the flow of soil water and make the soil water available to the whole soil. And they, as I said, they control the land degradation. Then there is another socio-economic characteristic of this traditional society, that is traditional governance system. Here you see that they have a very well established governance system, decision making process, which is done through the most of the time. I will say earlier it was all the time, but now it's most of the time through a consensus. And the meetings may be convened, meetings may be again adjourned till we reach at the consensus. So the voting and present day democracy was not in practice earlier. Now it is coming up slowly because of the changing circumstances. But this decision making through consensus was the root of the whole working of the system. Another point which I wanted to share with you, we did a lot of study on traditional fishing. Traditional fishing was most sustainable manner. This is what they were doing in the streams, and they were rearing the fish in the stream and then collecting only that much which comes in that spot where they were rearing. And the overall stream was never disturbed. So this was again another example of sustainable management of resources. What they collected from their fish naturally, but there are many other animals as well. Then I also wanted to discuss briefly 2 minutes that traditional ecological knowledge-based healthcare system. The state of Meghalaya and Northeast in general is very rich in medicinal plants, and these medicinal plants, they are used for the healthcare system. Still a large part of the Northeast is not fed with the formal healthcare system. A lot of these healthcare practitioners, based on their own knowledge, they are providing the healthcare service. Here this gentleman sitting in the down there, he collects all the medicines from the various sources, maybe forest, maybe agricultural field, maybe from home garden, and then he provides a healthcare service. And this healthcare service is very closely knit. There are people, there are traditional institutions, forests, urban practitioners, and they are closely knit and they are dependent one on the other. There is a traditional ecological knowledge-based food diversification, and you see these are mostly aquatic foods, except one, and they collect it, and there is so much diversified food that it is quite, it has been so far quite sustainable, and the collections are not in excess of what it produces. There are other wild liquids which they collect, and therefore they are much more resilient than many modern societies as far as disaster and climate change is concerned. This is the water management. The forests, they are source of water. Then this is another. The people have tap the stream and they are collecting water from the streams, and that serves the purpose rather than depending upon the pH. Then another management of water for the sometimes for irrigation. You can see on the other side there is a forest, and then there is a valley, there is a agriculture, and this agriculture and forest, they are interdependent. This is the rural Meghalaya, rural northeast, how they collect water. This is, if they don't manage water, this is what happens. Then there is a lot of indigenous knowledge in northeast, where they produce the silk and other, and they are good weavers, and handicrafts they produce. The communication, lot is talked about the road bridges, but they actually serve the purpose of crossing from the rivers during the flood time from one hill to other and connecting the villages. This is another, we took this photo picture in Moon district. The septic cultivation, which is considered to be, not sustainable by many people, although I don't subscribe to that fully. There you see that 20 to 30 different species of trees, they are grown along the crop. And the septic cultivation, if it is long cycle, traditional, is sustainable. All septic cultivation are not bad, all septic cultivation are not good, but the long cycle are okay, but the short cycles are definitely, they are not good. Then you have several types of agricultural practices practiced by the traditional society, which one of these, pani kheti in the Nagaland. Then there is another one, Jabo rice farming. This is also quite sustainable. Just use of water and the kind of landscape and physiography they have. This is the Patani, quite well known, but this is also has been sustainable. About 30-40 square kilometer area is covered by this. Then another, I wanted to explain this also. We have done detailed study on this. Bun. I am in Shillong for about nearly 50 years now. I have been told when I came that Bun is very, very unsustainable and there is a lot of soil loss and this and that, and then it's causing 350 tons of soil loss every year for a hectare and those things. But those places which were under Bun cultivation 50 years back, they are still under Bun cultivation and they are being practiced. So if that hypothesis was correct, by now there would not be soil, but still they are practicing. So this is one way. I am not going into details, but I can say that in several places this type of septic cultivation is still being practiced, and if not much, they are being practiced. This whole system I do not want to describe. I can prepare for description, but Mr. Bharat has already cut short the time. In conclusion, what I can say is, traditional societies practice several natural resource management practices that enhance their resilience for disaster. The disaster is not so much known, not so much common in the areas which are inhabited by the tribal and traditional society. Though biomass-based livelihoods are considered to be more vulnerable to climate change. If you read the literature on climate change and vulnerability, etc., they will say that all those people who live near who are dependent on the plants and animals, forests and agriculture, fisheries, farming, they are most vulnerable. But here in this case, you can see that if all these practices are based on the traditional ecological knowledge, they are actually not so much vulnerable as much are the other places. Where you cultivate one crop, and not only one crop also, if you are cultivating rice, a particular variety of rice. If you are cultivating wheat, a particular variety of wheat. So there is hardly any diversity, But here in safety cultivation, we all know that 30, 40, 50 different species are cultivated, and that makes it much resilient and then not so much prone for the disaster. Then traditional practices, what I recommend that they need to be documented. They are being documented, even our group has documented, but there is more emphasis should be there, and they should be promoted for improving disaster readiness. The agencies working on for disaster management need to be educated with TEK related to climate change and disaster management. What is happening that we have several institutions from block level, district level, state level, national level. At every level we have disaster management institutions, and there are so many research organizations which are engaged in this, but they are not learning from the knowledge of our ancestors, where they are not learning from our knowledge of the traditional society, and they are making everything through the modern tools and techniques. So I recommend that they should just try to keep in that aspect as well, so that and that will help in better in disaster management practice. Thank you so much. Did I take more time? I could have talked about that 40 minutes.
Thank you, Professor Tiwari. So now I call upon Dr. Pandey.
Yes. Yeah, he's getting it ready. Yes, okay.
Pandey, it's so nice to be here. And the two speakers who were there before me, they took me back the memory lane when they spoke of Tupul, this incident of Manipur, which just happened. Incidentally, I happened to be in the same unit. Those were my boys, and we were together. I was second in command of that unit, wherein those people around 30th went down with that landslide. So I associate very, very closely with that unit and with that incident which happened. Also, the speaker from this who spoke of Haflong. I was in Haflong for quite some time. I was there for 4 years, and I could very closely relate with what you were saying. And we were associated with the start of the Julima Fest, which took place, which is a regular feature now, as also the Falcon Fest, which now takes place in Umrangsho. The things back then were not very peaceful, but I'm happy that things have improved over a period of time. It was only about an hour and a half back when I got a call that if I can speak something on environment and disaster management. Both are topics wherein anyone can speak about, but they are not as simple and not as easy, and it takes time to comprehend and understand. My unit primarily deals with environment. It is an infantry battalion, but it is into environment management. And by virtue of being in the uniform that I am in, I have personally been associated with a lot of disasters, not caused by me, but incidentally, fortunately and unfortunately, I have been there when those disasters struck. It started with when I was a young captain in 1999. we had this great Odisha cyclone, wherein we were the first responders, we were the first to reach there, and thereafter we were there for a good 20-25 days during the cyclone. Followed by some avalanches which we had in Siachen and Upper Ladakh, wherein my own team got stuck and we had to evacuate them. We had this incident of Bombay floods in July 2005, if I am not mistaken, when we got a call at night around 10:30, 11 or so that there are around 150 to 200 children who were stuck in a school in a place in Bombay called Malad, and wherein we had to actually swim down the narrow lanes of Malad, followed by the tsunami, where I just happened to be there after the tsunami struck. As far as this session is concerned, I will just tell you about what the Army has been doing for environment in general, and my unit in particular. As I told you, we are primarily into into environment management, being an infantry battalion, and we are not scientists. What we learn by association and interaction with luminaries like you, we try to put into place a system post our learning. I shall cover the next. How do you go to slideshow? Oh, it's already there. Okay, how do you move?
You have to set over. Down.
Yeah? Easy. No, it's not happening. Side and this side over here. I shall talk, the issues that I shall talk on are as mentioned on the slide. How did it start? How did the Army get into environment management? It was the Nobel laureate, Dr. Norman Borlaug, who actually recommended it to Mrs. Indira Gandhi when they were flying over Mussoorie and they saw the denuded state of the Mussoorie hills, which was caused by extensive limestone quarry. They recommended that you need to have an armed force which has to come into environment management in this area, else this place will not be saved. And that is how the first Environment Management Battalion of the Indian Army was born in 1982. As a unique experiment in the world, it was the first time that an army battalion had to be called in for environment management. Right now, the army has 10 environment management battalions in different places. The latest one is the last one, which was raised in 2019 for the national program of Namami Gange. And it has since then been in Allahabad. It is based in Allahabad, Prayagraj, Kanpur and Varanasi. The history of the unit where I am in presently, we are based in a place called Nameri. Nameri is a tiger reserve incidentally, near Kesur. And how it started was that in the year 2000, the tree felling had gained national attention in that area along the Assam-Arunachal border. And inspired by whatever work had taken place by the other ecological battalions of the army in other places in India, the government of Assam made a proposal for another unit, and 2 units were sanctioned for the state of Assam, one near Tezpur and the second at Kokrajhar. We were raised in 2007 at Tezpur. Our role and task is afforestation, primarily, and environment management, in addition to some other things which are now flashed on the screen, which says soil conservation, biodiversity management, social forestry, and of course, conduct of mass awareness programs, as there is no afforestation or environment management program which can succeed without community involvement. Our deployment, I don't have a pointer with me, I'll just... On the right, if you see where the Lakhimpur is written, that we start from there and come down to Gorepudi on the left. We are based here. We are based here. This is the Namiri Reserve Forest. We are based here. We have a detachment here, which is on the Itanagar axis. A detachment at Gorepudi. And our work is taking place somewhere in this area, next to Arunachal border, and in this place, which is again next to Arunachal border. Before I start with the projects that have been undertaken till now, just two slides which are slightly of academic nature. The total forest cover in India is 21.7%, out of which the good forest, the dense forest is only 56%, the rest is open or the degraded forest. Since 2001, the national forest cover has increased by approximately the size of the state of Kerala. However, the increase in forest cover in the country has only been in the degraded category. The reserve forest or the dense forest cover has come down. Coming to the northeast, the total forest over the northeast is 64% plus of the geographical area of the northeast. And the northeast states, they account for 23.7% of the total forest cover of the country. One interesting thing to note is that while the total forest cover of the country has increased, the forest cover of northeast has come down. The projects which we as a unit have undertaken till date, we have, if you forget the figures on top, just go down to the yellow row, 5,000 hectares and 79.3 lakh saplings is what I have planted till now. You just come down to the black row down below. This year, we have a mandate of increasing the forest cover in the state by 3 lakh every year. So in the year 2022, we have done 4 lakh sapling plus till now in an area of 211 hectares. This is the area which we are doing, the blue shaded area is where the work is presently going on. The red thing, the line which you see is the road which goes from Tezpur to Bharupon. The star is the place where we are located, and the bluish area is the area where our work is presently going on. We have an area of around 500 hectares in this area. There is a closer look. The work is going on here in this 5 hectare piece of land. Another project area of ours is on the Itanagar axis. This road is NH15. The red line which you see is National Highway 15 going to Itanagar. The star is a place where one of our detachments is located, and the bluish area is where the work is going on. The place is called Naharchan, or 900 hectares of the area. This is
On?
switch off this light.
Switch out.
Switch off this light.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to sequentially show how afforestation takes place in our area. Unlike the rest of the country, where it primarily revolves around sowing and thereafter nurturing, the greater problem in the northeast is to first clear the undergrowth. And undergrowth is not only undergrowth, it is up to 15 to 20 feet in height. They are almost as thick as trees. You first have to clear the area, prepare the area, and only thereafter afforestation can take place. We had security issues earlier, things are better now, and this is the area which first has to be cleared. This is the area clearance which is underway. And incidentally, this area is full of venomous snakes. You have the pit vipers here, you have the banded crabs here, you have the king cobras here, and of course the pythons. And not to speak of, the leeches are a scourge of this place during the rains, the monsoons, where the afforestation activity actually takes place. And all these forests are also infested with elephants. Consequent to clearing the area has to be prepared. So this is the area, look at this area, the undergrowth has been cleared. Undergrowth looks like forest, but it is not forest. It prevents creation of forest. So this area is cleared first. Thereafter there are road demarcations for plantations. Once these roads are made, they are pitched up, and there only thereafter it starts taking place. The afforestation activity per se starts taking place. The modes of transport to the afforestation areas, the project areas, we do it by means of boats, wherein we have to carry the saplings across the river or rivulets to the plantation areas. We use elephants, river crossings, nala crossings. We use our mules, our 80 animal transport mules of ours, and they help because the load carrying capacity of a human vis-a-vis a mule is much more. A mule can carry up to 80 kgs in a single shift as compared to 15 to 20 kgs by a human. Casualty preferring, all the plants which are planted do not survive. The survival rate might be 70%, 60%. So the 40% which die down of the previous plantation, previous year, have again had to be refilled the next year. So casualty refilling is an integral part of the afforestation process. We have issues of cutting of saplings, and in our area it is primarily because of man-animal conflict, because the people, the villagers, they do think that if there is forest, there are elephants, and if there are elephants, they will come into the areas. However, what we try to tell them is that if there is forest, if there is whatever is required for them in the forest, the elephants will not come out. These are some saplings which have been cut because of this perception. Some results which we had, flashing some pictures of 2010 to 15. 2010 was an area where we started, 11 you can see some growth, 13, and then after 15 they have grown up to 12 to 13 feet. Similarly, the area around Nameri, in 2008 there was nothing there, 10 some saplings and 13. This is a picture, an aerial picture, a canopy view of the forest in 2022 of the same area which you saw in the last slides. This is again an area which was taken up on the Itanagar axis on the Assam side of the area. Across the Arunachal, we started in 2019, and we're lucky that the afforestation has come up well, and they're around 10 to 15 feet. They are 3-year-old saplings now. Nursery management is an integral part of any afforestation process, and we have our own nurseries. We have there is an MIS which we have, we monitor it on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And we have nurseries at 3 locations, having a 4.5 lakh sapling, that is the captive generation capacity of our nurseries, and we source all our saplings, plants from our own nurseries, primarily to reduce the cost. People, as some of you would have gone into the pavilion which is there, the buried ground there, you would have seen, people go to the forest, collect seeds, the seeds are thereafter germinated in our nurseries and subsequently shifted to the afforestation sites. This is how we started with. These are earlier pictures. We do not follow this methodology now. We are now more into polypod production, because in case you do it on ground and thereafter you uproot it and then reroot it, that causes root shock, and root shock reduces the survival of the saplings. So we are more into polypod. The polypod is shifted to the project areas. Miscellaneous projects that we have undertaken, this is one of the medicinal park which we came up with. This is a picture of last year. We have 248 medicinal species presently available. And this is an attempt to revive the traditional Indian medicines in our area and also propagate them by telling the villagers as to what they can do. And thereafter, of course, facilitate commercial marketing. This is the area which was there in 2021, early 21. This is what it looks now. It's a aerial picture. And any of you who would have some interest would want to come, we would be very happy to host you in our location, especially in our medicinal park area. These are some workshop training programs. Azola is an aquatic foam which we use for our nurseries. It is very good for nitrogen fixation. We have our own Azola ponds and we use it for our polypods as a compost, as a manure. We have our own vermicompost projects, 3 of them in our area. If you would have studied the Assam floods recently, all those areas which had bamboo plantations nearby, there the soil erosion issue was not as much. So we have started this bamboo plantation in our area. We have 16 species of bamboo, and the idea is to have a repository of all the kinds of bamboos which are available in the northeast. Some rain water harvesting project which we have undertaken, and it works like this. On top left is the channel which we dug around 700 meters in length. It came to pond number 1. Pond number 1 was a reservoir number 1, and from it through underground percolation it came down to pond number 2, which is there on the bottom right, and thereafter we use it for pumping into our nurseries. Community involvement, as I mentioned earlier, no afforestation project can ever succeed without community involvement. It is an integral part. We keep doing this. We had recently reconstructed a community hall for the local missing community who reside next to the area. Their support is extremely important for us because they are actually the forest dwellers. And some installation of solar lights and IT equipment in their schools because they said they don't have any, and because of lights they are not able to do anything when the elephants come into the area. So deforestation drive pictures of this year with the local community. World Environment Day which we undertake with the local population, and whatever we know we share with others. This is one of the pictures of the forest trainees, the rangers, trainees who come to the area for some capsules. Some challenges which we have are of course there. We have, as I told you earlier, we have illegal felling going on. There are pictures of illegal felling in our area. Reasons we just discussed. There are habitations and grazing grounds. We have soil strata. We have sandy soil strata, and plantation there is difficult. Low-lying areas, the survival becomes a problem. Transportation saplings, I have spoken about. We use animals, we use elephants, boats, and of course manual labor, man-made fire, and of course heavy weeds which we all saw. This has been one of the grey areas, and I was just discussing with Mr. Marak, who is a retired Forest Services officer, that because of lack of finances, we have not been able to. In fact, the local government has not been able to realize the true potential of the unit which was created. Whatever we have done, when these units were created, it was decided that the administrative expenses, which means the salary and the office expenditure was to be undertaken by the Government of India, and rest, the actual operations expenditure was to be undertaken by the state, but somehow that has not happened, and our actual project expenditure, the operational expenditure till now has been nil, but somehow we have done it. Now this is what I would actually want to speak a little more on as to what all can we do, what is the potential. Exceeding annual targets, advanced targets, not much of a problem, we have done so. We can carry out river, we have done this, river and hill stabilization as one of the speakers before me spoke of. We did this in Prayagraj, along the banks of the Ganga. I will not get into the technicality of this slide because it's a different topic altogether, but this is the system that we followed. We do it by recce of the threatened river banks, preparation of the banks, securing of the banks by sandbags, and thereafter covering of the bank by geogrid or wire, and thereafter planting of reeds and vetiver. Reeds is down below where the water level is there, below the water level, and vetiver on top. These are some pictures wherein we were approached by some villagers in Prayagraj because of their erosion in the area. Their lands were going down, their houses were getting threatened, the entire village was getting threatened, and some work which we hope to undertake. On the left is before we started the work, on the right is the further follow-up of the work. We had some work on the slopes, you can see that. And finally, when we left, the picture on the right is after the second spate of floods. It stood. This is a National Geographic picture. Wetland rejuvenation which we carried out in Prayagraj. There was an old lake which we could revive. This can be done. Somebody spoke to me about the lakes in Assam, which the government wants to resolve. This is a picture before the work started. During the work, this is the lake which was there before it started. Before the work started. It used to be a very old lake. The circumference of the lake is 3.5 kilometers. But over a period of time, because of population, because of biotic pressures, the lake had become of what you see now. But after about a year of work that we did, if you see the skyline behind, you will be able to compare both the pictures. This is 1 year earlier, and after the work that was done there, this is the lake what it looks like now. This is what it was earlier. See the skyline, and see the same skyline now. And it is not the area which you see behind. It has not been left. It has been deliberately left for creation of biodiversity hotspots. And what you see on the left, they are artificial floating islands that we created by use of canna and vetiver. The roots of these plants will go down and interact with water and also help in pollution abatement. Again a picture of the same area, you see the palms behind. This is 1 year earlier, and after that this is the same picture, the palms behind. And this is the creation of the biodiversity islands and hotspots. They became breeding grounds for a lot of migratory species in that area. And an area which used to stink, nobody used to come there, became a tourist place. We also treated the sewer lines which used to go into the area. Again, it's a different topic altogether. I'll pass this. Food forest is which can be created. Can we arrange short of time? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll just brush past. Just to arouse social consciousness, we can have a rule. Community involvement to make green not a move but a movement, and we are always there, and anything expected of us we shall definitely try and put in our best foot forward to do whatever we expected of. There is a very age-old adage in Hindi which says मान लो तो हार है, ठान लो तो जीत है, and ठान के हमको रखना है. Thank you. Jai.
Yeah. I request all the panelists to occupy the seats here on the dais. Panelists to occupy the seats on the dais.
I'm working on a district administration in Baksa, which falls in the BTR. As you have mentioned, there are several activities regarding the flood erosions which happens in the BTR. The village get washed out during the flood season, several districts. And so I would like to know, like, is there any plan of your plan of action for intervention in those areas where this happens, and what the potential of further erosions can be, because next every year flood like occurs in Assam, and these Brahmaputra rivers and all, Manas river also include this. So this is the first question. And regarding animal and human conflict, recently several cases of animal and human conflict has happened in the forest areas in the Baksa districts as you are working. So based on the several methods, which is one you have mentioned, is generating the food for the animals in that forest, so that they never come to the villages to graze them or document them. So in that prospect, do you have any plan or any suggestions, or if you have further plan in that area, please let us know, or if you can collaborate with the district administration in that. Thank you.
I'll address these questions one by one. The first question is, we have plans, we have the capability, and we have now the know-how because of the experiences we have had over a period of time. But we have to be approached by the government, we have to be told by the government. We by ourselves cannot just go into any area in the state and start doing it. If there is a district administration or the state government which tells us to go to that area and tells us in that area there is a problem, then of course if we are tasked, we shall come, we definitely will. And same goes for your area. We ourselves cannot decide we will go here, we will go here, we will be going there. We have to be told that there is a problem in this area, what can we do? And thereafter we have a mechanism, we get out the key, come up with solutions, come up with suggestions, I would say, and then say these are the suggestions, and in case you want us to go into the area, please tell us, we go there. So we have everything else with us, but we have to be told.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Just to add in one, because the second part was very interesting. You said that I think you wish that lesser human element conflict should happen because of what I would understand. But the thing is that it's happening the opposite way. Then that means that at some point of time there's a larger episodes of animals coming to the mainstream and creating issues. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle. Because many times what happen, we as human civilization, we think that we are a smart species. And we always think that, okay, ये बना देंगे तो animal ऐसे behave करेगा. But we are forgetting that what was the animal before, now the animal is also changing. In fact, there are episodes now coming all over India that in Uttarakhand, which was actually surprising, that recently tourists got down from the vehicle and they can see a leopard is behaving like a domestic cat and asking for food. What I am trying to make it a point here is that evolution is nasty. Evolution is a nasty game, it's an emotionless game. Okay? And one has to do not think that evolution is like a romantic idea. Please do not take it otherwise. Only thing is that Kornasab can do is that he can create what was actually expected. But we cannot actually rule out the behavior, how the animal will behave. Because at the same time, let us not also forget the wave of globalization, the market forces. In fact, the episodes of leopard coming into the city has become more frequent. Once the population of the waste has been generated more in urban ecosystem. Not because the leopards like to come and eat waste from the dustbin, because the waste have been picked up by the dogs and they feed on those pizza, the Troy, this thing, and it has a lot of mayonnaise. It is basically calorie. So when they eat it, the population becomes more. Okay? As a whole, for leopard, it becomes easier prey. So one will underline modernity, wildlife, and discourse of this waste is something very interesting. So I would say that yes, it's a question, but we have to also open up our eyes, not from the anthropocentric point of view, but also from biocentric and eco-anthropocentric point of view, because things are changing. So if you are changing, why don't the animals will change? That's something which I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last question before ending the session. Yes. She's going to answer.
Whenever we see these kind of disaster being reported, we see that same problem year after year, and similar situation, similar kind of havoc is being created. The kind of work that your board is doing, the battalion is doing, they are connecting all the dots. I think you are working with community, you are intervening with technology also. So is there a mechanism also that your learnings and your understanding of how to deal with these disasters, what is the permanent solution to it? Because seeing from the angle of SMT, as Professor also pointed out, so we do not see that there is any clear solution that is being integrated even in the policy. I've seen the STIP policy which will recently be implemented, I suppose. So I see that when the solution is already there, because you are deeply connected to the community with the problem solving thing, how will it really convert into larger game of solution? So that is my core question, because we always have huge respect for the army, and we see that whenever any kind of disaster is there, it's always the army people who come to the rescue. So we have huge trust, we know that they have everything to solve. And another question is that what is it that you expect army, or how they should be strengthened, because there is when these summits and these kind of summits are being held, the corporate is there, they have their point of view, people have money, they have their own concept of how development paradigm should shift. But it is not visible anywhere on the ground. Either it is visible in clusters and in small pockets, but as a whole we are not seeing that we are really moving towards it. So that is our concern. That's why we need these kind of conversations. Where are we heading? That's larger concern for us.
In fact, when I was talking to Shankar Deep a few days back, but somehow it didn't happen. I was just told in the morning, and I could have covered this here also, but the session is about to close. I'll not take much time. Maybe we can discuss separately as well. We have a response force, but disasters cannot only be response force. There has to be something which has to address the cause of the disasters. It has to be both response and therefore that how to prevent. NDRF is there, and as per whatever I had the figures last, NDRF had only 12 battalions till now all across the country, and I think only 2 for the northeast. So it actually is a response. By the time the NDRF reaches the place, the disaster has already happened, the people have died, there is local administration, local villages who have already reached the site. And by the time our response forces reach there, the disaster is gone. It is only the mopping up work which is actually done. So we have to have some kind of mechanism wherein we have to first prevent those disasters. So we have to have a first responder, and before that, how to do it. So we had I had written a small paper on that. Maybe once we will discuss separately, I'll share with you. We have a lot of, of course I wanted to amalgamate military into it, and the army men retire very early. By the time outside in the city street, when a man is not even settled, the army man has retired. He retired at 33, 34, he's retired. Thereafter, he still has a lot of potential in him, and most of us in the uniform have handled all kinds of disasters. Just because, not because of anything, just by virtue of postings in different places, from Andamans to deserts to glacier. I had proposed that the people who just retired, who are young, 33, 34 age, if they can be amalgamated into the system, there will be local people. Local people who know the system better, the local conditions better. If they can involve, and they should not be working only when the disaster strikes, because when the disaster is not striking, it can be a year, it can be a year and a half, till that time what do they do? A response force will come into play only when the disaster has struck. But this gap in between, these people can be utilized to address those core concerns. They can also be involved into environment management, afforestation in that area, also into basic activities like development of ecological tourism, because it's not there. So it's a different topic altogether, and we can talk.
So let me summarize now, and the validity session already has started, and I'll briefly summarize the sessions today. And if I summarize Dr. Abhinandan's speech in one line, I think indigenous practices or knowledge base has to be inculcated and respected when the development takes place, or infrastructure development takes place. So, and then Professor V.K. Tiwari has also presented on several indigenous practices in Northeast India and the importance to continue. And Colonel Pandey has presented his thoughts on environment management and spoke about his contributions of infantry army during the disasters and soil conservation, river bank stabilities, and many other things. So the first speech was by me, and that was Professor Bharat, and I agree with other speakers, but one question was actually raised by Dr. Abhinandan about when Britishers built these railway or something, we didn't have such disasters to take place, but then now we have more disasters. But the developmental scale is largely different. They are now and there. And also the methods that were adopted, because this question was even asked by one officer in Northeastern Railway, because several disasters took place along the railway line. And the adopted methodologies were completely different. Because the time scale, the given for NEFR, Northeast Front Railway, or NHA, or anybody, is different altogether. And but social impact that has to be taken as one of the important factors for developing the infrastructure. That is a major thing. I think that is what the message we take today to back home. With that, I'll conclude the session and I'll hand over the session to Dr. Arindam.
Thank you, sir. It's a very important session we have come across, and it's going to end now. But it's not end; it's just going to start as ourselves. And I'll say with all the dignitary guests, there are three things. Last 3 days session, I learned one thing. One session, there somebody talked about that tiger needs forest and forest needs tiger. It's a beautiful thing, and there are a lot of things inside of it we must think about. Secondly, Colonel sir also talked about the prevention is better than cure. I think that has to be not postmortem. Do something catastrophic happen and then we'll do postmortem. And I think lastly, the Green Summit we said we must go back to our home and then plant a tree as soon as possible. Thank you so much. And we'll do the facilitation to our guests. Start with Colonel sir. Please, so he's just going to facilitate you, sir, for coming here and such a beautiful speech. And I think time is short and we are not able to. And then Tiwari sir, V.K. Tiwari sir, please. Thank you, sir. And second sir, please. Well, sir, please.
Your presentation was really fun.
Thank you. Such a beautiful session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.